The morning fog clung to Arlington's hills, hiding a shadow that didn't belong. A masked figure stood at the edge of the crowd, eyes locked on the tomb guard sergeant Michael Thompson as he marched his precise 21 steps. The air was heavy with reverence until a knife flashed in the sunlight, slicing through the silence toward the sentinel's heart. Gasps erupted, but Michael's hand moved faster than fear. What the crowd didn't know, what the attacker never expected, was that this tomb guard wasn't just a symbol. He was a battle-hardened Marine who'd faced death before. And as the blade hung in his grip, the real question wasn't who threw it, but what secrets this sacred ground would reveal before the day was done. Before we dive into the story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The morning fog hung low over Arlington National Cemetery on that crisp September day in 2025, clinging to the rolling hills like a silent shroud over the nation's hallowed ground. The air carried the faint scent of freshly cut grass mixed with the earthy aroma of distant pine trees, a reminder of the living world encroaching on this place of eternal rest. At the center of it all stood the tomb of the unknown soldier, a stark white marble monument etched with words that resonated deeply in the American soul. Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known but to God. This wasn't just a stone slab. It was a symbol of sacrifice, honoring the unidentified heroes from World War I, World War II, Korea, and beyond. Those who gave everything for the ideals of freedom and democracy that defined the United States. Sergeant Michael Thompson assumed his post just as the first golden rays of sunlight began to pierce through the mist, casting long shadows across the plaza. At 30 years old, Michael was a seasoned member of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, known as the Old Guard, the Army's oldest active-duty infantry unit dating back to 1784. His uniform was a masterpiece of precision, black boots polished to a mirror-like sheen that reflected the surrounding headstones, white gloves immaculate and free of any blemish, and his blue infantry coat adorned with gold buttons that caught the light like tiny beacons. He executed his march with unwavering exactness, 21 measured steps along the black mat, a sharp about-face with the click of heels echoing like a metronome, then a pause of exactly 21 seconds. This ritual wasn't mere ceremony. It symbolized the highest military honor, the 21-gun salute, a tradition rooted in American history. For Michael, guarding the tomb was more than a duty. It was a calling forged in the fires of real combat. He'd served 2 grueling tours in Afghanistan, where the dust-choked valleys of Helmand Province had tested him in ways no training could fully prepare for. He remembered the ambushes vividly, the sudden crack of gunfire, the metallic tang of blood in the air, and the heartbreaking loss of comrades like his best friend, Private Ryan Keller, who had taken a sniper bullet while covering Michael's position during a night patrol. Those experiences had sharpened his instincts to a razor's edge, teaching him that vigilance wasn't optional, it was survival. Now, standing here at Arlington, Michael honored not just the unknowns interred beneath the marble, but every American service member who'd paid the ultimate price. In his mind, the tomb represented the unbroken chain of sacrifice that kept the nation free, a reminder that democracy's flame was tended by the blood of the brave. A modest crowd had gathered early that morning, drawn by the solemn beauty of the sight. Tourists from across the country mingled quietly, their voices hushed in respect for the over 400,000 souls buried in the cemetery's vast expanse. Among them was Colonel Robert Jenkins, a retired Army officer in his early 70s whose posture remained ramrod straight despite the years. Robert had commanded troops through the jungles of Vietnam in the late 1960s and the deserts of Iraq during Operation Desert Storm in the early 1990s. His medals, tucked away in a drawer at home, told stories of valor under fire. But today, he was simply a grandfather, here with his 8-year-old grandson, Ethan Jenkins. Ethan, a curious boy with tousled brown hair and a backpack slung over one shoulder, clutched a small American flag he bought at the visitor center. "Grandpa, why does the soldier walk exactly 21 steps?" Ethan asked in a whisper, his eyes wide as he watched Michael's rhythmic patrol. "And why does he stop for so long? What if he has to itch or has to sneeze? Wouldn't that mess everything up?" Robert knelt down to Ethan's level, his knee creaking slightly from old war wounds, and placed a gentle hand on his boy's shoulder. His voice was low and reassuring, carrying the gravelly timbre of a man who'd barked orders in the heat of battle. "That's the tomb sentinel, Ethan. He's from the old guard, the best of the best. Those 21 steps and the pause, it's all about honor, a salute to every hero who's fought for our country. He doesn't move because true discipline means controlling yourself no matter what. It's what keeps America safe and strong. Soldiers like him stand firm so we can live free." Ethan nodded slowly, absorbing the words, but his gaze wandered across the plaza. The cemetery sprawled out like a sea of white markers, each one a story of service and loss. Other visitors added to the tapestry of the morning: the Harris family from Texas, Tom, a burly oil worker with a cowboy hat tipped back, his wife, Sarah, a schoolteacher with a warm smile, and their teenage daughter, Lily, scrolling on her phone but occasionally glancing up with teenage curiosity. Nearby, a young couple from New York, Jake and Emily, held hands tightly. Jake was a software engineer, Emily a graphic designer, both on a quick getaway to D.C. And then there was Maria Gonzalez, a single mom from California, pushing a stroller with her 3-year-old son, Lucas, who babbled happily at the birds flitting overhead. But amid the reverent atmosphere, one figure stood out like a shadow in the sunlight. A young man in a dark overcoat lingered at the periphery of the group, his hands buried deep in his pockets. He wasn't snapping photos like the Harrises or whispering appreciatively like Jake and Emily. Instead, he remained unnaturally still, his eyes locked on Michael with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He was in his mid-20s, with sharp features partially hidden by a baseball cap pulled low. Robert noticed him first, those old battlefield instincts from Vietnam kicking in, where spotting an anomaly could mean the difference between life and death. "Something's off about that guy," Robert muttered under his breath, subtly shifting Ethan behind him for protection. Michael's peripheral vision registered the outlier too. In Afghanistan, such unnatural stillness often preceded danger: a Taliban spotter blending into a marketplace crowd, or a suicide bomber feigning casual interest. Michael didn't break his stride or alter his gaze, adhering strictly to the Sentinel's creed, but his mind cataloged every detail: the man's deliberate positioning, the way his coat bulged slightly on one side, the absence of any tourist-like behavior. This was home soil, Arlington National Cemetery, a place of peace, but Michael knew threats could emerge anywhere. His heart rate remained steady, a testament to years of training. As the sun climbed higher, burning off the fog and warming the air, the crowd swelled slightly with more arrivals: a group of high school students on a field trip from nearby Virginia, their teacher, Miss Patel, herding them with quiet instructions to observe respectfully. The man in the dark coat began to move, circling the perimeter of the viewing area with calculated steps. He paused near the Harris family, close enough to overhear Tom Harris's booming voice. "This place always gets me right here," Tom said, thumping his chest. "All these headstones reminds you that freedom isn't free. My granddad fought in Korea. He's buried over that hill. Heroes, every one of them." The man snorted audibly, a derisive sound that cut through the quiet like a discordant note. "Heroes, or just pawns in endless wars?" His voice carried a bitter, accusatory edge, drawing puzzled glances from those around him. Sarah Harris turned, her eyebrows knitting in confusion. "Excuse me? These men and women laid down their lives for our country. If you can't show respect, maybe you shouldn't be here." The man, whose name was Alex Rivera, though no one knew it yet, stepped forward, his posture tense. Alex had grown up in a working-class neighborhood in Chicago, enlisted briefly in the Army after high school, but deserted after 6 months, disillusioned by what he saw as pointless deployments. Now, radicalized by online forums and anti-war literature, Alex viewed the tomb as a propaganda tool, glorifying America's military adventures. Respect? For what? He retorted, his volume rising just enough to attract more attention. This monument turns death into some noble myth. Afghanistan, Iraq, how many more unknowns will we add? Because politicians send kids to die for oil and corporate greed. A murmur spread through the crowd. Lily Harris, the teenager, looked up from her phone, intrigued despite herself. Wait, I get what you're saying about wars being bad, but these guys didn't choose the politics, they just served. Tom Harris crossed his arms, his face reddening. My brother's a vet from Iraq, lost a leg over there. You don't get to trash what he fought for. This is about honoring sacrifice, not debating policy. Miss Patel, the teacher, hushed her students who were whispering excitedly. One boy, a lanky kid named Carlos, raised his hand tentatively. Ma'am, is this part of the tour like a debate on history? Not exactly, Miss Patel replied softly, but her eyes darted to the security guard stationed at the edges of the plaza. One guard, a young woman named Officer Ramirez, keyed her radio reporting the disturbance, but protocols at Arlington emphasized de-escalation for verbal disruptions. They weren't yet treating it as a threat. Maria Gonzalez, the California mom, shifted uneasily, pulling Lucas's stroller back. Please, everyone, calm down. My little one's getting scared. Lucas whimpered, sensing the tension. Alex seized on the moment, his voice growing more impassioned. Scared? Good. Kids should know the truth, that this place glorifies violence. How many more tours in the Middle East before we wake up? The military-industrial complex feeds on it. Robert leaned toward Officer Ramirez as she approached. Ma'am, that hand in his coat, it's been there too long. Feels like he's probing. I've seen this pattern in combat zones. Ramirez nodded, her training kicking in, but she moved cautiously. We'll handle it, sir. Probably just a loudmouth. Michael, immobile but hyper-aware, tracked Alex's every shift. The man's movements mirrored counterterrorism briefings, testing boundaries, gauging reactions, distracting with words. Michael's mind flashed to a marketplace in Kandahar, where a similar agitator had drawn attention before an IED detonated. His muscles tensed imperceptibly beneath the uniform, ready to transition from sentinel to defender. The debate intensified. Jake stepped forward. Look, I voted against those wars too, but attacking a guard, that's not activism, that's cowardice. Emily pulled him back. Jake, don't escalate. Alex's eyes flicked to Michael repeatedly, calculating distance. About 15 yards, a clear throw. His stance widened subtly, a pre-attack indicator that Robert recognized from his Iraq days. The sun now fully illuminated the plaza, casting harsh light on the scene. Suddenly, Alex yanked a black ski mask from his pocket and pulled it over his face in one swift motion. The transformation was jarring, from vocal protester to masked assailant. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. The era of false idols ends now, he bellowed, his voice muffled but venomous. Panic set in. Sarah Harris grabbed Lily's arm. Get back! Tom shielded them both. Miss Patel heard her students. Everyone moved calmly. Maria scooped up Lucas, who burst into tears. Alex's hand emerged from his coat, brandishing the combat knife. The blade caught the sunlight, sending flashes across the marble. For the real victims of American empire, he roared. His arm coiled back, then snapped forward with practiced force. The knife sailed through the air, rotating end over end in a deadly arc aimed precisely at Michael's chest. Time dilated for those watching. Ethan buried his face in Robert's leg. Grandpa! The Harris family ducked. Jake pulled Emily down. Carlos, from the school group, froze, mouth agape. For Michael, it was pure instinct. He saw the spin, the trajectory, calculating in fractions of a second. The blade closed in, 10 yards, 5 inches from his heart. His white-gloved hand shot up, fingers closing around the handle mid-rotation. The catch was flawless. No wasted energy, his stance barely shifting. Security breach, armed assailant, northwest perimeter. Michael's command voice rang out, steady and authoritative, slicing through the mayhem like a general's order. The crowd erupted into full chaos. Screams, people scrambling, phones dropping. Officer Ramirez and her team sprinted forward, but the plaza's expanse made seconds feel like minutes. Alex, momentarily stunned, how had a statue reacted so fast, pivoted and bolted toward the cemetery's outer paths, dodging headstones. Michael secured the knife, rifle still in his other hand, and advanced with controlled urgency, his ceremonial march giving way to tactical steps. He scanned for secondary threats, mind racing through protocols. Robert, acting on reflex, shouted to Ethan, "Stay put behind that bench." Then he moved, his old frame surprisingly agile. As Alex leaped a low marker, Robert extended his leg in a classic trip maneuver from close quarters training. Alex stumbled, crashing onto the grass with a thud, wind knocked out of him, mask shifting to reveal part of his face. Ramirez and two other guards piled on, wrestling cuffs onto his wrists. "Don't move, hands out." They frisked him, no explosives, but a crumpled manifesto decrying U.S. militarism. "Clear," Ramirez called. Michael arrived, positioning to cut off escape routes. "Secure the area, check for accomplices," he directed, his voice calm amid the storm. As they hauled Alex to his feet, the mask came off, completely exposing a young, ordinary face, clean-shaven, with eyes burning with unyielding conviction. The crowd, now at a safe distance, watched in hushed shock. Sirens wailed, approaching. "You think stopping me changes the system?" Alex snarled, straining against the restraints. Robert approached Ethan, trailing cautiously. "Military background?" Robert asked, noting Alex's build and throat technique. Alex's defiance cracked for a second. "Enlisted young, saw the hypocrisy up close, sending us to die for lies." "Then you should understand," Robert replied evenly. "I led men in Vietnam and Iraq, lost too many to roadside bombs and ambushes. They fought for ideals bigger than politics, so you could voice your grievances without blades." Michael handed the knife to Ramirez as evidence. "You targeted a symbol but aimed at flesh and blood. This tomb honors the unknowns who secured the freedoms you abuse. Protest? Fine, but violence dishonors every grave here." Alex spat. "Freedom? It's an illusion. Wars profit the few, break the many." Maria, holding Lucas close, spoke up from the crowd. "You scared my boy for what? Change comes from votes, not knives." The Harris family nodded. "Tom, damn right. My brother sacrificed for this country. You don't get to cheapen it." Miss Patel's students whispered. Carlos, asking, "Is this real, like history happening?" Police arrived, taking custody. As Alex was led away, Michael addressed him one last time. "Your message, it died with that throw. What endures is the resolve of those who serve on battlefields or here, guarding memory." The applause started with Tom Harris, spreading like wildfire. "That's American grit," Jake cheered. Emily wiped tears. Lily filmed the moment. Michael nodded subtly, then returned to post. 21 steps, about face, pause, unbroken. Robert hugged Ethan. "That's guardianship, kids, standing tall for what's right." As the crowd dispersed, sharing stories, the incident became a legend. The knife evidence now underscored the tomb's truth. Freedom's guardians remained vigilant, their discipline a shield for democracy. What does it mean to stand sentinel in America? It's the quiet strength that turns ceremony into protection, sacrifice into legacy. In facing threats, we honor the unknowns and recommit to the union they died for. Would you stand as firm? How do we preserve such resolve in turbulent times? The answer lies in remembering our nation's strength is its people, ever watchful. If you enjoyed the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more stories like this one. Now, click on the video on the screen to hear another story that's just as powerful and captivating, with courage, sacrifice, and a choice that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about duty and justice. Click on the video.